What's up, my wizards? It's Dev from Mtg, aka the Pied Piper of Peace Pipes, and today I got some more Theros Beyond Death weekend spoilers to kind of clean up for you here. And honestly, kind of a low pool over the weekend. We only had about 7 cards that we need to talk about, and some of them are cold soup, but some of them, towards the end of the video, are some hot sauce. So let's go ahead and kind of start from the bottom up with Oread of Mountains Blaze. This is actually, ironically, the newest card going into recording this video, but it's really probably just limited playable. This is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 1/3 enchantment nymph. You can pay 2 and a red and discard a card to draw a card. So it's got the type enchantment. That's pretty decent. Plus, it's a reasonably high toughness this early in the game on a 2-drop. Plus, it fuels escape and stuff in a decent mana sink in the late game. So definitely sealed playable as like a 20-second card or something like that. But obviously not super exciting, but it will serve as a mana sink and a decent engine in the late game for some decks in Limited. So I do want to point it out. But moving on, because there's really not much to say about that thing. Let's go to Nyad of Hidden Coves. That's a great name. This is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/3 enchantment nymph. And as long as it's not your turn, spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So it's one of these, and although this card looks really interesting, like that's a fairly powerful text box, I don't think that it actually transcends into standard decks. I've seen some rumblings of this in the Flash deck, but just like Wave Break Hippocamp, a card that we saw the other day, still loving the name of that. Anyway, a lot of good names in this set. This is, this looks good in the Flash deck too, but like you just don't want to pay 3 mana rather than hold up for like a Sinister Sabotage or something like that. You've really got to have your mana open. And by the time you can cast this and have mana open to counter spells and stuff, it might not be worth it anymore. And by the way, if you are going to play either one of these cards, you probably play Hippocamp over Nyad. So I think it's kind of a moot point in standard, all things considered. But in Limited, the card does look pretty sweet. Again, just having the enchantment creature type might matter for this or that. But this is obviously shaping up to be a limited playable, archetype of some kind. It's kind of reminiscent of the draw 2 cards effect or mechanic from the last set. I see a lot of similarities in that. And honestly, a lot of the cards would play together in a kind of budget standard deck pretty well. But altogether, I'm not seeing it outside of limited playability. But it is fairly limited playable for what that's worth, especially considering that it's not just instants and sorceries. It's whenever you flash something in, an enchantment or a creature. So that could actually really help, especially if you got some Vexing Gulls. That's right. I know how to seamlessly transition. The best thing about this card to me is the art. I love it. Looks like an old school cartoon. Like I'm talking like a 1940s cartoon to me. But anyway, goal is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 bird with flash and flying. And that's it. So it goes in the Jeskai Birds deck that we did not long ago. The deck does want to play at instant speed, so you can hold up for Sinister Sabotage. If they don't cast anything, you just play this, right? It's still not good enough for Constructed, but unlike Nyad and Hippocamp, at least you can hold up for a counterspell and still play this. I do like that, but all in all, I love this in Limited, especially given that it's common. I should have brought that up about Nyad, by the way. It's common, so it's, you'll see it more in Limited, so that's really good. But is it Pauper playable? Highly doubt it. That format is very high power, and I'm not sure that this fits. Now, Vexing Gull, I don't have to talk about for Pauper at all. It doesn't go there. But in Limited, this is really fine. I've always liked Windrakes in Limited. Exactly this mana cost, exactly this stat line, 2/2 flying. When you throw Flash on it, suddenly you can use it as like a removal spell against an opponent's flyer, and that's really sweet. You can hold up for a counterspell in Limited too, and then just if they don't do anything, develop your board. So I love flash creatures in Limited, and I especially love this stat line on flyers at this mana cost. So to me, this is like extremely playable in Limited, but that's about it. So I'm going to move on to Sheolcrack. Actually, let's not do Kraken yet. Let's take that off the screen. Let's do Arena Trickster. Again, I'm trying to kind of go in order of playability, which means I probably should have done Trickster towards the very beginning of the video. But this is 4 mana, 3 and a red for a 3/3 human shaman. And whenever you cast your first spell during each opponent's turn, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Trickster. So that's probably not even as good as Nyad, but it's got the same mechanic printed onto it. Again, this is shaping up to be a decent Limited deck, and one that's pretty easy to put together because it's like mostly comprised of commons. You probably need a piece exactly like this, something that gets value that accumulates over the game rather than just like one-shotting something every time you're able to actually trigger this ability. So I think that it probably needed a card like this, that archetype, and I guess I'm excited about that, but you'll never see it outside of draft. So going to move on to Sheolcrack. Like I said I was going to do. Sheolcrack, which is it's really fun to say, is a 5 mana, 4 and a blue for a 3/5 Kraken. And it's got Constellation. Whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. I really like this in Limited too. There's a reason that I saved it until this technically late into the video. I know we kind of just started, but we don't have too many more cards to talk about, so it's kind of late in the video. I think this is fantastic in Sealed. I think it's great in Limited of all stripes, honestly. In Draft, this looks good. It reminds me of Sage of the Falls, I think it was called, in Throne of Eldraine. Although it's not directly comparable or anything. Sage of the Falls got you ETB value when it entered the battlefield, which is huge. But you know what else is huge, and people don't talk about it enough? If you have a high toughness creature like this, a 5 toughness creature, going from 2 to 3 power is enormous. That is an enormous step. And you can take out all kinds of stuff that you couldn't before. Plus, you can start doing real damage on attacks too if you have an open board to swing into. So, just the difference between 2 and 3 power is enormous. It really is. And it's kind of unsung and a really, really subtle difference. But just that 1 point means the world. So the fact that this doesn't get ETB value kind of sucks, but at the same time, you're probably still going to be able to generate a fair amount of value out of it over the course of the game. Even if you just get 2 loots off of it, that's still pretty decent. And the whole time you're fueling escape and stuff. So really sweet creature here that I think is going to form not necessarily the basis, but in some ways the backbone of an important, blue limited deck. So definitely wanted to shine kind of a light on that, but I want to move on to Perforce's Intervention. This is the second to last card of the day, but the only rare that we'll cover here. This is X and a red for sorcery. You choose one. The first mode is create an X1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. And mode 2 is Perforce's Intervention deals twice X damage to target creature or planeswalker. So this is actually kind of really good. I don't necessarily love the sorcery speed on it, but it's a take on a fireball or a blaze. I'll put blaze on screen just because it's a more simplistic effect, but it's obviously just a take on a red X spell that deals damage. But in this case, if you do point it at a creature, it's much better than a card like blaze or fireball. But if you point it at a player, it's a little bit worse as just like a straight up win condition. But it's still kind of a build your own ball lightning, which is kind of dope, especially for decks that, they want to play into the late game and then land a big X spell of some kind. This is a really good candidate that because it's decent in the early game too. You don't see a lot of X spells that are decent in the early game, but even for like 4 mana, which is kind of a lot, but it's still important because red decks don't always have access to removal that can do this so easily. Just keep that in mind. For like 4 mana, this can kill all kinds of this can kill a Rotting Regisaur for 4 mana, which is definitely important. Plus there's like Pelucranos to worry about in the next format. And even if your opponent has escaped it and it's huge or something, you can at least hobble it, make it a lot smaller with a card like this at a reasonable cost. Plus this will shoot down Nissa's for, I think about 4 mana most of the time is going to be the going rate on that. Cause you're usually going to be hitting for, trying to get the 6 loyalty off of her. Teferi's though, this is usually going to take out for 2 mana because Teferi's almost always going to come down and bounce something. So this just kills Teferi for 2 mana, which is pretty sweet. And a bunch of other planeswalkers too. Ironically, this is a good way to take out 6 mana Chandra. It's a decent way to take out Nicol Boluses and stuff if they get popular. There's all kinds of things you can kill with this at a reasonable cost just when we're talking about planeswalkers. But, red decks have a difficult time some of the time taking out things like Lovestruck Beast, 5 toughness things. Even 4 toughness stuff like Questing Beast. Red decks don't usually have an answer to unless you're playing Slaying Fire. So this just has a lot more playability on it than a card like Slaying Fire. It scales intensely well, and if you ever do meet an empty board in the late game, then you can just basically fireball them to death, right? If you're playing a control deck or something and you time wipe them, then you can just cast this on your next turn for X equals whatever, a million, especially if you're playing Nissa or something. Imagine how big you can make this your ball lightning, your trampling haste guy. So I can just see the versatility on this being the most important part. Red decks are going to want to play it as a sort of removal piece, especially considering big red is looking more and more possible every day. A mono red mid-range deck that's actually worth something, and this probably slots directly into that. So this could see day one play. It's actually a really, really flexible take on a fireball, and I think that considering I've cast fireball or equivalent to fireball, roughly equivalent to fireball, probably over 500 times in my Magic career. And I would say that like 75% of the time, I'm pointing it at a creature. So this is just like way better in that situation. So, and again, it gives red a way to kill stuff it doesn't usually have the ability to kill. So I think it's going to be really important. Perforce's invention hasn't really like impressed everybody, but I think there's a lot of like niche things about this card that are really important. Like, even though you could just play Bone Crusher or Shock or something, it is important to note that this will kill like Knight of the Ebon Legion on turn 2. Gilded Goose on turn 2, all kinds of stuff, but it also again scales into the late game really well. So any Ironcrag Feat deck is going to want it, but there's also like multiple control decks that might want a piece like this. So I've got an eye on it, definitely do. But let's move on to what I think is my favorite card of the day pretty easily. This is an uncommon though. And I tweeted about the fact that this is uncommon because it amazes me that it is. Not only because of the complexity of the card, but also because of the effects in the text box. It's just unbelievable. This is Sai Ona, Captain of the Pyleus. It's 3 mana, 1 a green and a white for a 2/2 legendary human soldier. And when it ETBs, you look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal an aura card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Whenever an aura becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 human or white human soldier creature token. Now, that's a great text box. I shouldn't have to tell you. Those are 2 really, really good paragraphs right there. A 7-card dig for an aura is a lot of cards. It's so many cards. Somebody on Reddit has already done the math. It's something like, if you want to hit this on turn 3, you want to hit an aura when you play this on curve, you have to play like 16 auras if you want to hit it 90%, which is actually a lot. That's so many auras. But if you want to hit it 80%, it's something like 8 auras or 12. It's 12 auras at 80%, which is still kind of a lot of auras. So a 7-card dig looks like a lot, but I don't want to get too excited about it. I also don't want to get that excited about the second ability, although that is easily the more exploitable ability. I've already had multiple people inform me of some cool combos you can do with this, and I've come up with a few of my own. On Twitter, when I tweeted about this card, I had Keith Espejo tell me that this goes infinite with Shielded by Faith, and I've since seen this combo around on the internet, but I wanted to give him credit for it because it's the first place that I saw it. But yeah, Shielded by Faith. All you got to do is attach it to something. And then, since you attach it to something, you get a 1/1. You can just attach it to that, attach it to the next one, attach it to the next one. So you use infinite 1/1s, which is really, really sweet. But Dad Magic on Twitter also told me about the Felidar Umbra combo, which is really neat. You can do this with like any aura that you can attach for just a couple of mana. And if they make attachable auras in this set, this would be a really cool thing to remember. But at least in Commander, you can have Felidar Umbra out and just use whatever mana you have to attach it to stuff. But if you do have a Plains with a Wild Growth on it and an Earthcraft out, you've effectively gone infinite in this situation because you just tap each creature that you create to then untap the Plains and move the Felidar Umbra onto a creature you just made and just keep it going. So you're getting like infinite tokens that way too. So it's pretty freaking silly, but there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do with this. This slots directly into the Gauntlets of Light and Feyburrow Elder deck in Standard and makes your Gauntlets like way easier to get to. So that's going to be important for that deck if nothing else. But also in like Commander and even some other formats, there's Bound by Moonsilver, which will get you infinite dies and enter the battlefield triggers. So if you got like a Blood Artist or something like that, or if you have say anything that gives you a creature when another creature enters the battlefield, or maybe the thing that why can't I remember the name of it right now? The thing that mills a card whenever a creature ETBs, that thing. You can take advantage of that combo, and it's only like a 2 or 3 card combo. So Bound by Moonsilver is another one to look out for. So there's just all kinds of really cool stuff you can do with this card, but I haven't really talked about Standard too much. I guess there's some good auras in Standard. If you're just looking at like the highest power level of aura that you can play, I'm probably looking at stuff like All That Glitters and Staggering Insight, which are, at least sort of on color. Staggering Insight, you have to go into blue. And most of the things people have talked about, playing this card in Standard with, would force you to go into a third color. And I don't really like 3-color aggro decks right now. I don't think the mana is great for them, so kind of have to worry about that. But maybe they'll print like a land in this set that's, basically you can tap it for any color as long as you're casting an enchantment or something. Maybe they'll do that. But in any case, Even if they don't, there is some cool stuff you can do. You know, these two enchantments are probably the best 2-mana enchantments, but you probably want to find an enchantment with it when you play it. And then either play that enchantment on the next turn, on turn 4, if you're playing it on curve, or you play this on turn 4 and find a 1-mana enchantment, you can go ahead and play on it to get value. So if you're trying to find a 4-mana aura, I think the best ones are probably Candlelight Vigil, which is a bad card, and then Commanding Presence, which is a little more interesting, but also still kind of a bad card, let's face it. I think it's a lot more interesting if you play this for 3 on turn 4 and have a mana left over. So you could play this and then like Kaya's Ghost Form. And that way you get a 1/1 and a way of protecting Sai Ona. So that's really cool. But you could even go like Glaring Aegis, which is on color with it. You know, tap something down, make a 1/1. That seems okay. So there's kind of stuff you could do with it. I'm also kind of on the lookout for an aura that grants like hexproof for 1 mana, and maybe it has flash. That'd be really, really nice. But again, that's pure speculation. I'd rather talk about the stuff we can already do. And at least Kaya's Ghost Form is a very interesting card to be played with this. Also, keep your eye out for stuff that gets printed, like auras that have Escape. We've already seen Escape Velocity, and it might be the only aura with Escape that we see. That would kind of suck, but it would still be worth kind of looking at for the Siona deck. But more often than not, I think this is probably going to be played in Commander, even though the text box is so good that I think it's probably standard playable if it gets the support. But I don't expect it to get the support right away. Even though we're in the enchantment set, we're still going to have a relatively small card pool when Theros comes out. And I think we probably have to wait for another set or even 2 to probably get the proper support that a card like this would require. So for the time being, at least, I think it's more of a Brawl commander, a very bad Brawl commander, and just an EDH commander, a format that it can probably do a lot of really, really cool things in. So I'm excited about the card. I think it's really cool. I want to experiment with it, especially in EDH at large, but especially when some good support card gets printed for it. I'm going to really want to mess around with this in Standard, but I am still a little bit worried about it. I will say one way or the other, though. You're getting card advantage off of it if you get an aura, and you're getting even more card advantage if you can then cast that aura. So for 3 mana, you could effectively go up 2 cards pretty easily. So even if they do kill your Siona reasonably quick, you might, again, still be up 2 cards on them. So could be really, really good. Could be really, really good. Let me know how you feel about it. And everything else that we talked about today, you know, like is Sheolcrack actually worse and limited than I think it is? Is Vexing Goal actually better than I think it is? There's all kinds of stuff. Perforce's Intervention is an interesting card to talk about as well. Am I over-evaluating that? Is it really not that impressive? Or is it freaking nuts? I think it's actually kind of nuts, but anyway. And then finally, again, Siona. You got any ideas that I didn't lay out in this video? Because there's probably all kinds of crazy stuff that we're missing with Siona. People have already brought up some, like, I'd never heard of Bound by Moonsilver, or I'd heard of it, but I'd completely forgotten about it until like yesterday. So there are going to be all kinds of crazy auras out there we haven't considered with this. So let us know down there in the comments section. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done that yet. Hit the bell for the notifications so you get more spoilers, and deck techs coming up really, really soon. Some gameplay coming out as well. So a lot of cool stuff, in the next couple of weeks. Make sure you're subbed for it, and hit up the Patreon if you really enjoy my content. We need your help more than ever, especially not only this time of year when ad revenues are super low, but also because Kappa just went through. There's a lot of terrible stuff going on. A lot of bad stuff. So go to patreon.com/SBMTG or just hit the link in the description. If you want to throw $1 my way every month, it helps more than you can possibly imagine. But there's also TCG Player. They help sponsor my content. They're the best place you're going to be able to get these cards because they sell stuff for really cheap. I don't know if you knew, but you can hit the link in the description. Go over there and check out their prices on single pre-orders from this set if you just want like a price guide. There's really not like a good price guide on the internet anymore. So TCG Player is kind of one of the best places you can go if you want a price guide, a barometer for how these cards are looking in the community. So check the link out. Helps me out when you just click on it. And do all the other stuff. Do the YouTube things. But I guess I'm done for this one. Just kind of wanted to catch up on the weekend before we dive back in tomorrow, because there's going to be a whole bunch more spoilers tomorrow. And then my exclusive preview for this season comes out on Tuesday. So you want to be ready for that. It's actually a pretty sweet card, but that's literally all I can say. So make sure you're subbed for no other reason than that. You want to see my exclusive preview. But in any case, I guess I'm done for this one. Just hit me up in the comments section and let me know what you feel about all this biznaz, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.